Daniel challenged me by asking critical questions about Africa and the world, and demanding and also seeking solutions that we need to be able to discuss, so that a 1 year, a 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 10 year, a 15-year-old can start to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And this is the intent of Africa's development journey, the sport. Daniel Lafumbom, welcome to the sport.
Thank
the
you.
Sport is where Africa's development journey is discussed. But today, though you are at this sport, you will be taking the mantle to interview me so that we can know what you are doing and also what we are doing, and you can challenge us.
So my first question for you is, by 2050, there's supposed to be 10.5 billion people on this earth. How are we supposed to feed all of them?
Thank you very much, Daniel. To your question, I like to Africanize it because that is an abundance that we have as a continent. And by Africanizing it, I will use an African proverb, which is also, we have a lot of them. And this African proverb is that if you want to eat an elephant on your path, you have to chop it down into small pieces. What that means is that the solution to addressing food insecurity challenges across the entire world needs to be addressed not just in a way that can produce food, but it needs to be addressed in the different strands that exist within the entire agro value chain. What that means is that how we produce food, how we add value, how we process it, and how we transport to markets. As we're speaking today, each and every year, the world is losing food. 1/3 of the food produced is lost. And that's about 1.3 billion tons of food, which equals to $1 trillion. This is a lot of money. So if they give you a bag of $1 trillion, you cannot carry it. It is money that can can fill the entire space that you are seeing here today. And when you take it down to Africa, the continent is losing 48 billion. So in a nutshell, in simplicity, is that food waste and food lost, more importantly food lost, is not only losing food that has been produced, but is also losing money. It means that to feed the 10.4 billion people that will be on this planet Earth in the next 32 or 31 years or so from today, we need to do three things. Value must be added to what is produced. Because the result of these food waste losses is because value is not added. If, for example, someone produces tomatoes, if you go to up country, here in Kenya or any other African country, you will see by the side of the road, tomato being displayed. Very beautiful, ripe, nutritious tomato, but after 2 days, no one buys it and then it gets thrown away. That's food being lost. If you go to the villages, corn is produced, maize. Because it cannot be dry, it gets spoiled and it's thrown away. And then if you take that, it means that if they were to be dried or turned into flour and preserved, there will be no food lost, and then people will be able to have more food. So adding value to what is produced is very, very important to reduce that. The other aspect is that how we produce food is not just the producing, but there are some aspects that need to be taken into consideration. Our land needs to be fertile. So it needs to have what we call ecosystem services. Water needs to flow on our land, it needs to be fertile. We need to ensure that we have bees. Bees pollinate. And bees pollinate 75% of the crops that we depend on. So in a nutshell, to feed the entire world, we must be able to address the aspects that are not only about production, but more about adding value to what we produce and avert the losses that are causing 1/3 of the food that is produced to go to wastage and losses.
Excellent answer. This one, I'm really passionate about this one because it's a big problem. So I know me as a youth, I really don't want to do farming. and most people don't want to do farming. So how can us youth still be participant in the agricultural sector, but not do farming?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the question. Again, with an African proverb, as I told you, I will be Africanizing the answers to your questions. A chameleon doesn't look only in one direction. It looks in so many directions. What that means is that for the youth to be able to be engaged in the agro value chain, because the agricultural production is just part of the agro value chain. When you produce, you need to add value. You add value, you need to transport. You transport, you need to take it to the consumers and markets. So what needs to be done is that the youth do not necessarily need to be engaged in agricultural production, in farming. What they need to do is they can use their skills. Their skills can range from being an ICT person where they develop applications. You know, social media today, it was developed by youth. You know, Facebook, where Mark Zuckerberg, you know, Twitter, you know, Instagram, all those things were developed mostly by young people. That then means that they're coming up with a tool that is not necessarily agriculture per se. And even right here in Kenya, there are a group of youth that have come up with an application, an app application called Ibago Pamoja. I'm sure you must have heard about this. And what it does, does, these youth are not farmers. They don't go to the farm. They sit in the comfort of wherever they are, and at the comfort of their cell phone, they develop an app that someone at the comfort of their cell phone can be able to see where food is produced, if it is tomatoes, if it is cassava, if it is maize, and be able to connect those who are producing it and suffering losses to someone who can bring a solar dryer where they can be able to access it, and also connect them to a financing institution like a cooperative or chamas like they call it here, or Njangi as they call it in other countries, and you know, right? In West Africa, in Nigeria, in Cameroon. So the point I'm making is that youth have a lot of opportunities to be able to tap into the agro value chain, but they need to find where they are comfortable. If it is markets, they can tap into it. If it is, if they have a skill in law, they can start to see how they can help people develop enterprises around agricultural processing. If they have a skill in marketing, they can start now to see how they can be able to market all these things. But what is more important is that despite the fact that the youth can intervene across the agro value chain, they need to develop skills that are relevant to intervene. For example, you are doing design and you love designing Africa Kitenge. You could still develop your design style in such a way that it passes a message on the opportunities that are found in the agro value chain. That, okay, we are losing food that is worth 48 billion US dollar that can feed the 252 million people that are going to be hungry. So you can design it with an opportunity, with someone lifting a basket of fufu corn and jama in one hand, showing how he is so happy eating that food, and maybe a market where they bought it. And you can actually, as a result of your design, start investing in getting opportunities or creating opportunities, investing in solar dryers or investing in opportunities that can help drive this. So the youth have a lot of opportunity, but they must be willing to listen, to learn, and retool their skills so that they can be relevant in all the facets of the entire agro value chain.
Excellent answer again. And for this question, I know that by the population is booming, and with this so little space on Earth, there's supposed to be so many people, especially in Africa. So how are we supposed to stop them? But not necessarily stop them, but to make space. Because with the population space, how are we supposed to make food, textiles in production when it's just humans?
Very excellent question. Again, with an African proverb, do not look where you fell, look where you sleep. What this African proverb is telling us is that it is not the number of people that matter. Population in itself is not an issue, but it is the quality of the people. The quality of the people is very, very important, because with quality, it means that you can be able to solve challenges, to turn challenges into opportunities. And so the bigger discussion should be, how do we ensure that the increasing population have the right skills, the right talents, the right aspirations, and the right motivation and inspiration to solve the challenges that we mentioned, food loss, that is costing the continent 48 billion US dollars. So reorientating the mindset of people, especially young people, because as you know, the young people like yourselves are increasing to up to about 35 or even plus, are increasing. They constitute about 60% of the Africa population. So if you just do a simple mathematics, Africa population is 1.2 billion. So you take 60% of that, you're talking about 720 million youth in the continent. But what they need is to retool their skills, to have the right skills, the right attitudes, to develop themselves and be competitive. Because if they do not do that, then they'll become a burden, because they will not be relevant to the realities of the 21st century. I'm sure you know this. Robotics, you've heard about that. AI, artificial intelligence, you already know that. We're talking about big data. You definitely have heard about blockchain. You've surely heard about all those sort of things that are happening now, and the youth must be able to start understanding how do they happen. Like we talk about the value chain, which you ask the question, how can youth be relevant without necessarily having to engage in farming? They must start to learn those skills, to develop the skills that they can be able to market what they produce. They can add value to what is produced. And unless those skills are developed, quantity will mean nothing. It's only quality that means something. And by quality means skill sets that are relevant to make Africa competitive.
Great. Next question. So, I know in Europe and North America, stores open 24/7, people are working 40 plus hours. But when they come here, stores are just open from 9 to 7 p.m. And yeah, true. And how can we change that? Because basically 9 to 5, 9 to 7. But they're not open like in North America and Europe, like public holidays. You still see like overtime workers. But here during public holidays, let's say like for Eid, people may start vacationing on Thursday and then come back on like Wednesday.
Very relevant question. Thank you very much for bringing this question. I think it's a sorry state, if I would put it that way, that the continent is facing. But to Africanize the discussion again, there is an African proverb that if you do not brush your teeth, do not say that if you do not brush your teeth, you will say that the food is sour. So you know, someone gets up in the morning, he just starts eating, he will say the food is sour. If you look at the continent today, the continent is 20 times less productive than their competitors in the global market. That means every $1 that is generated in Africa, at the same time $20 is generated elsewhere out of Africa. Why? Because the other countries and continents are more productive 20 times as compared to Africa. And what that means is that the laxity in and taking things for granted and sitting and hoping that someone else will come and do something for the continent, that laxity has translated to some of the challenges that we see today. When they say malnutrition, kids in the continent dying before the age of 5, mothers bearing these kids before the age of 5, 257 million people going to bed hungry every day. All this, when you put together, is testament to the fact that there is something wrong somewhere, and something wrong is summed up in one word called attitude. And that attitude means that as individuals, we must be able to change our attitudes towards turning challenges into opportunities. And to do that, we must work hard, because there is this formula called 3 W's, which is work is 8 hours, leisure is 8 hours, and sleep is 8 hours. When you multiply by 3, that's 24. So if you see the way God created the world, He gave everyone 24 hours. That means whether you're a prime minister or a president or 11-year-old like yourself, you all have 24 hours. Even your dad here have only 24 hours. Even though I'm your dad, I only have 24 hours. But It then boils down how we use this time is what will make us achieve more and solve solutions. But if you look at the leisure, there is something called African time, which is a terrible misnomer that have ever existed on this earth. There is nothing like African time. You call a meeting to start at 9, they show up at 12 o'clock. And they say, don't worry now African time. Then wasting time and not building skills, because there is what is called human capital. Human capital is skills, talents, inspiration, initiatives, experiences. When those are nurtured, they constitute 62% of the entire world. But to do that, we must be able to recognize that we have the solutions and the talents, but having a talent is not enough. Talent times effort equals skills. But skills are not enough. Skills times effort equals achievement. And that is the solution that Africa needs to embrace, and more importantly, the youth. And that is the reason why we came up with this aspect of innovative volunteerism. How can you leverage what you have? Like what you are doing here, that's innovative volunteerism, as you told me. Using your time to interview, to get ideas so that you can take it back to your school and also engage your classmates to teach them, to learn from them. And that collectively, doing it to solve a problem, environmental awareness, to ensure that people can understand that they can do little things. That takes time and that takes passion. And with passion, and with a focus, we can achieve so many things.
Awesome. So that's why there's like this, like, I watch YouTube videos, and then like one travel vlogger, they go to Africa, they like did this parade always going around TIA. This is Africa, where they go to an event.
Oh, TIA?
Yeah.
This is Africa.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Anything that goes wrong, this is Africa.
TIA.
TIA.
Yes. Last question. So how come, for example, like the British man, for example, the British man, they won't go to Disney, they go to Disneyland, and even if they don't go to Disneyland, their life did not end. But how come the African man will still try the way to go, take ship, go to Disneyland in Florida? Will their life change? No. They're wasting all this money and going to Disneyland, Universal Studios, CN Tower, Canada, Florida, when we can use that money to invest in solar dryers, copy-paste material. How can we stop this?
Thank you very much, Daniel. I love the way you paraphrase the question, and it's a challenge not only for Africa, but I think for everyone who loves Africa. This question that you've asked, they need to really hear about it. There is an African proverb, the last one maybe, which is that the belly, do not allow the belly to make you useless. What that means is that selfishness is destroying the continent. And selfishness makes one blind himself. It's a backward mentality that by being selfish and individualistic, the problems of Africa will be solved and some few people will benefit from it. What that means is the challenges Africa faces today provide opportunities for others. For example, you are doing youth and environment, enhancing your journalistic skills. There is someone who might not be good with the skills of journalism, but he might be good in generating content. And you might not have the content. That means that you can get the content from that person and market it for him. And in that way, that person benefits, you benefit. And that is called collectivism, that alliances, that your challenge is an opportunity for me and my challenge is an opportunity for you. And to collectively see it that way, we will be able now to create originality. But more importantly, the selfishness is resulting to people thinking only about themselves. And when people think about themselves and think that they are succeeding, if you succeed alone, you have actually failed. And that is why through innovative volunteerism, we are driving a logic that engages people to banish selfishness, to banish individualism, and to embrace hopefulness and not hopelessness, and to know that when they combine their skills and talents together, especially focusing in what Africa have got in abundance, its sun, its land, where too much food that is produced is getting lost every day, they can be able to reverse those losses, create opportunities, and everyone will benefit, and they will make about 1 trillion US dollar. So the answer to your question is simple. Selfishness must be banished and selflessness embraced. Collectivism must be embraced and individualism banished. We must be kind to one another because kindness is genius. And by being kind, we must be able to willing to retool ourselves, to learn new skills, to change the attitudes that by thinking that you succeed alone, you have succeeded, to know that succeeding alone is failure, and that the Africa's failure is an indictment on each and every one of us, regardless of where we are in the world. Africa failure is an indictment on each and every one of us, and therefore we must then come together as a collective force to solve the challenges that Africa faces, and know that selfishness will only continue to drive negativity, to drive poverty, and more importantly, we must embrace mindset change. The mindset change to move away from these dirty, ugly attitudes of being selfish, of hatred, of jealousy. And anytime someone thinks that he can hate someone, he should throw away. It's a thing of the past. I mean, it's so ugly. I don't know why people hate one another. And so your question that you asked is very, very important. Africa should know that what they have is them. Because the biggest opportunity that happens for each and every one of us is to live, is to be living today. And by living is a blessing. But we must always ask ourselves, what are you contributing by living? And the answer is to use yourself to be at service to others. Because without being at service to others, Africa will continue to move down a path that will never have any return. But I have hope in people like you, the over 720 million young people in the continent, and even those who are young at heart. As I always tell you, youthfulness is ideas. Youthfulness is not urge. And youthfulness is passion. Youthfulness is responsibility. So thank you very much.
Jealousy na really poor
What did you say?
Jealousy na poor
Jealousy na?
Jealousy na poor.
Na poor? Yeah, jealousy too much. Jealousy is bad, as you say. That which you are using pidgin to do that, right? Say jealousy na poor. Say jealousy no fine.
Jealousy no fine, no?
Yes. It was a great pleasure, and thanks for those brilliant, exciting, and inspiring questions.
Thank you.
I'm truly impressed and touched. Thank you. As you just heard from an 11-year-old, asking critical questions, showing her understanding of the issues at 11 years old. That was actually humbling, as well as it was also challenging me, that if I am at this age today, and then my daughter, 11 years old, representing so many daughters across the world and across the African continent, sons and daughters who are actually asking these very questions, and sometimes they ask the questions and no one listens to them. What you just heard was not just a clear call for each and every one of us to take responsibility, but it was a call for us to be selfless and not selfish, because collective efforts is what is needed to be able to address the multiplicity of challenges that range from climate change, food insecurity, youth unemployment, to addressing poverty, to lifting people up from the bottom of the pyramid, to giving hope, to giving solutions to each and every citizen across the African continent and even around the world. What you just heard is testament to the fact that we must move away from selfishness and embrace selflessness. What you just heard is that there are opportunities in the agro value chain that each and every youth can be able to embrace. That the agro value chain, what $1 trillion US need each and every one. And the African proverb contextualizing it that a chameleon looks in all directions means whether you have a skill in law, in legal practice, in marketing, a skill in fabricating solar dryers, a skill in journalism, a skill as a seamstress, it doesn't matter. You can retool it to tap into the agro value chain that is worth $1 trillion US. As you just heard, Africans sometimes abandon opportunities and seek it elsewhere. The opportunities are right here in the African continent. And sometimes we forget what we have, which is us. That by our mere existence, it's a big blessing. We should then use ourselves to be at service, to solving problems, and embracing one another as our brothers and sisters, and being one another's keeper. Because the challenges are so big for an individual to handle. And that is why we must banish hatred, jealousy, individualism, and selfishness, because it has no place. It's ugly in the 21st century. And we should never embrace such ugly things and backward mentality that by being selfish and individualistic, we can rise up to the top. Actually, if you rise alone, you have failed. You would have failed. And so let's embrace one another, because that's the recipe to drive the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The sport was really on spot.